Welcome to the Ask the Herbalist podcast with Lily Cunning. That's me, your host. Ask the Herbalist is brought to you by Haven Herbs, which is available to anyone, anywhere at havenherbs.com. So I was helping a customer the other day try and find out what remedy would be best for them. They feared that they had a respiratory infection, either the flu or RSV or whatever, and they weren't sure. Haven has a lot of products in the respiratory support uh, collection, and they wanted to make sure that they were using the right thing, as do I, right? We don't want to over medicate. We don't want to medicate improperly. And so finding out with a line of inquiry what would be the most appropriate was necessary. And I'm really glad that they reached out instead of just willy-nilly buying something that may or may not work for them. One of the reasons that people try herbalism and it doesn't work is because they're thinking about herbalism as a substitution for pharmaceuticals. And that is not how herbalism works. We need to look at your root cause. We need to look at you as an individual and ask some questions, because not all formulas are going to work for you with your condition. It's much more tailored and custom, and that's a good thing. So I'm really glad that they reached out because I was able to guide them to figure out what remedy might be best for them. And here is sort of how the shortcut of how I do it. So hopefully you can see my screen. So basically, I first asked, what color is your mucus? And that can sound like an invasive question, right? Like, ew, you want me to blow my nose and look at it? Bleh. Like, personally, mucus is my least favorite bodily fluid. It kind of makes me, but you have to look at it. Look at its color, look at its consistency. So they answered that their mucus was a lot. They had a lot of mucus, but it was mostly clear, sometimes white tinged. And I was like, great, I know how to help you now. So with normal healthy mucus, whether it is too much or just uncomfortable amounts, it's going to be clear or possibly white if you're dehydrated. Um, and sometimes it's runny and thin, and sometimes it's really thick. And thick usually indicates that you need to be drinking a little bit more water. But with normal healthy mucus, you don't have an infection. So don't take antibiotics, don't take antivirals, don't take any antimicrobials, because your body is having an immune response to something that it thinks is a pathogen, but it is not. It has not trapped viruses or bacteria in that mucus. That's what causes the color, right? Mucus is an immune system response that helps us catch and trap pathogens so that we can expel it, either by blowing our nose or swallowing it. Because then all of those pathogens get dissolved by digestive enzymes and acids. Excuse me, it's early here, so I wanted to record this quickly, but I'm still drinking my morning brew. So because they had clear, healthy mucus, just too much, and it was causing a sinus headache and pressure and, stuffiness, and you can maybe hear it in my throat, right? I haven't taken my tincture yet this morning, but right now we're on that weird cusp of winter to spring, and it causes my body to create more mucus. So I'm clearing my throat a lot. What I take is allergies, which you can see on the right there. It comes in two different sizes depending on what your family needs. It has antihistamines, decongestants. It's there because you don't have pathogens, but you need to relieve the symptoms, right? Now, some people get confused between Pangalactic Sinus Blaster and Breathe Easy. They both talk about decongesting areas, but here's the difference. They work on different parts of the respiratory system. Super easy, right? Breathe Easy is about strengthening the lungs. It's about not just strengthening the lungs, but also helping you, get up extra mucus. It focuses on the lower respiratory system, and it is fantastic for people that are compromised in the lungs in some way. I have helped very many people with this formula get off their extra nebulizing, get off of their steroids, things like that. Pangalactic sinus blaster is about the upper respiratory system, sinus congestion, sinus pressure, sinus headache. It helps just clear all of it out. It's fantastic. And so that is helpful, whether or not it's allergies or you have an infection, but you would also need to treat an infection, just at getting all of that out of there because it's miserable, right? Itchy, watery eye, or not itchy, but watery eyes from the pressure behind your eyeballs, the headache. I mean, I hate headaches, they are the worst. So that's the difference between Breathe Easy and Pangalactic Sinus Blaster. But there are other respiratory formulas too, and I highly encourage you to ask me questions about which one is right for you. But let's go over that mucus question just a little bit more. How do you determine what you've got and how to treat it? So again, we've gone over clear, healthy mucus, but you can also use that mucus to figure out if you need to drink more water. Yellowish mucus, and it says white or yellowish here. I would say that the early stages of white clear with a little bit of white is still normal. But if it's really dense, you might be looking at an infection. If it's yellow, you're definitely looking at an infection. And if it's green, you're looking at an infection. Green is the bacteria. Yellow is either viral or bacterial. Now, there are other things to look at in your mucus as well. If it's bright red or pink, you've got some bleeding going on in the nasal passageway, in the nose itself. You maybe blew your nose too hard and it burst a capillary, for example. So, oh, it says blug, blood, not blug. Yeah, so red or pink, that's what that means. If it's brown, it means dried blood. Or it could also mean dirt or fungal infection or mold infection. You definitely, if you've got brown snot, you need to think about what's going on in your environment, and maybe do some air filtration, maybe look at what's going on inside your walls. Black is definitely a problem. Black is mold or fungal infection or smoking. We really want to look at our mucus as a diagnostic tool to figure out what's going on with us. And of course, as always, if it's too thick, it means you need to drink more water. Who doesn't need to drink more water? I always need to drink more water. But that is one of the questions that we ask as herbalists to try and figure out what is happening with the body and how do we help. When you are trying to figure out what it is going on with you, ask a clinician because they're trained to ask the right questions, right? So most people are really taken aback when they book a consultation with me. My intake form takes about 20 minutes to fill out. It is comprehensive. It makes you think. It makes you answer questions in a couple different ways because I'm trying to get at root causes. It also helps me connect to the dots between systems, as well as you and your environment. So I ask a lot of questions as a holistic clinician because sometimes things that you don't think are connected are actually connected. I have connected dots for people where they were like, oh my gosh, I never really thought about the thing that I was eating was causing my rash. They were looking at contact dermatitis, like, oh, change my detergent, or, oh, maybe it's something that, I was exposed to, or maybe it's hives, right? But it could be caused by your diet. Like, there are lots of different things that need to be thought about when we are trying to get at the root cause and actually fix a problem. Right? We're not just doing symptom management here, although symptom management is important. Some of the remedies that are in the Haven store are symptom management, but we also want to get at root causes. So that was Ask the Herbalist, and I hope it was enlightening. And if this has spurred any more questions in you, please email me at at havenherbs.com, or go to the Ask the Herbalist subreddit and ask a question there. Welcome to the Ask the Herbalist intermission. It's our intention that we answer 2 questions per episode, with this intermission in the middle letting you know about our sponsor, Haven Herbs. Haven Herbs is a small batch herbal apothecary that is high quality, family owned, and has over 100 products in body care, remedies, and tonics that have all been requested by our customers. If you search our catalog and don't find exactly what you're looking for, please send us an email, because again, all of our products have their origin by customer request. We also have a dedication to education, hence this podcast, but also we teach free classes for cancer support community. We have a blog full of tips and education and a YouTube channel. And we have online classes available for purchase on the website as well. If you have questions for this podcast, there's a couple ways to do it. You can email me, Lily, Lily, at havenherbs.com, or you can visit our subreddit, which is called Ask the Herbalist. Ask the Herbalist questions on our subreddit will be answered on Reddit, but also may make their way to the podcast. You can listen to this podcast anywhere you happen to stream your podcasts on YouTube, and they are archived on my Substack, which I will link to in the description. Now, back to our programming. So what follows in the second half of this podcast is an interview that I did with one of my herb students, asking what draws her to herbalism, why would someone pursue an in-person, old-timey herbal education with an apprenticeship, and things like that. Because honestly, so few people do it this way anymore. And herbalism as a profession, particularly as a clinical profession, suffers when we don't learn in person with an elder who has lifetimes of experience. I wanted to kind of get those answers. I just asked 3 questions. What follows is a live interview after our herb class in February 2025. The audio is touch and go, so I've tried to adjust the levels, but we're doing it on Zoom because the ice storm in West Virginia kept this student from coming in person and had to have her Zoom in while everybody else was in the room. This is what follows. So I'm going to ask you the questions first, Mariah.
Oh, I thought I was asking questions. Bye, Stan. Be safe.
Yes, please be safe. So I have 3 questions for you.
Okay.
Let's let the door close. Okay. So the first one is, what draws you to herbalism? Why have you chosen to study herbalism?
That's a hard one.
Is it?
Yes, because I'm going to try and have the simplest answer for that.
Okay.
So with herbalism, you look at the body as a whole. I feel like that's very important, and that's something that I believe in from other practices that I've done.
Mm-hmm.
Not having the best luck with pharmaceutical grade items, I wanted a more natural approach. So originally I got into this to help myself and then eventually help other people.
Nice. Okay. And why did you decide to take an herbalist intensive? Because there's so many people out there that, they'll read a book or they'll go to a webinar, but they don't hunker down for like years at a time to really study. What encouraged you to seek out an intensive class like this?
I'm very hands-on, and I'm a visual learner, and I feel like having that communication with somebody else, being able to see it for yourself, it gives you a better idea of what you're reading or what kind of video you're looking at. And and making sure that you do it the correct way. Because there's plenty of people out there that show you this and that, and it ends up not being the right way, or they're missing the formula, or not taking other people into consideration and how it might affect them. Just like one herb won't work for everybody.
So I started a subreddit, Ask the Herbalist, that goes with this podcast that I'm recording for. And already, like people, oh, the internet and people, it's just a bad combo. But, you know, one of the things that I promised people was that they would get answers from vetted herbalists. And I'm the moderator right now, but I'm always looking for more people that I think are qualified to do this. And so the first person I said, hey, it seems like you're offering some advice. And while I'm okay with the advice you offered, I really would like to know what your credentials are. And I DM'd them, right? And I put them on mute until they answered. And they were lovely, right? They answered, and they're actually in school. They live in a country that licenses herbalists, and they're in the middle of their education. And they
Wow.
they had some really great things to say that showed me that they weren't just going to be like, oh yeah, that's the herb for whatever, like the drop herb X into slot Y kind of. So that was great. But then the second person that ended up doing that, I was like, hey, and I'm trying to be really open and friendly and welcoming. At the same time, I'm like, who are you? Um, and she got so defensive. Like, I DM'd her, but she responded in the thread about what her credentials were. And they weren't credentials, right? Like, she worked at a vitamin store chain, and they taught her a bit about supplements as in terms of how to sell them to people. Um, and, you know, she's read books. And I'm like, that's a great start, but that is not an education. And we don't see herbs like that. They're not replacing pharmaceuticals. The herb that you recommended for this person may or may not be the right herb, but you've learned that, for male, erectile dysfunction, this is the herb that you take. And that may or may not be true, right, for this person. So, but she got so angry. And I just, it's so interesting to me that in this internet age that we live in now, uh, it's almost like everybody's an expert, but we also distrust experts. There's like a very big culture of looking at an expert and, challenging them. But at the same time, feeling emboldened to be the expert. Like my kid does it too. He watches a YouTube video and he thinks he can do the thing on the YouTube video. I'm like, no, dude, that's actually a handicraft that people study for years. You know, um, yeah, it's pretty funny. So it always interests me why people take the deep dive, because it's not common anymore. Um, and then my last question to you is, so we've been in this class for almost a year, and before that we were together for a year. What's your biggest takeaway from this class?
My biggest takeaway, I want to say having a better understanding of the different systems and then how they come together. Especially when it comes to making a formula. I feel like before these classes, I would look at the ingredients and stuff and I'm like, oh, yeah, that stuff works. But how it actually comes together as a whole, like this one could be for digestion, like ginger, and then, well, digestion, circulation. But yeah, seeing how everything comes together as a whole and that it's just not a bunch of herbs put into a bottle. It is very important to understand what they do for each of the systems. That way you can have a better understanding of what somebody is going through or experiencing and if that's the right thing for them.
Well, that makes me happy because this year was called Bodies for Herbalists. Yay!
Well, I took anatomy in high school for 4 years. So, because I'm an artist, I was going to art school. So, I needed to sit there and draw people for 3 hours on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays. So that helped.
Neat.
Um, but actually going inside the body and understanding how, the pancreas, the liver, and the gallbladder are all tied together. You
Right.
know, that's a really big thing.
Do you have the book Trail Guide to the Body?
No. Who's
So,
that by?
I can't remember the dude's name, but it is such a fantastic book. It's anatomy. And he is a massage therapist and an artist. And so he does these beautiful drawings of the
Ooh,
layers of the body. So skeletal, muscle, like all of it. They're beautiful. And I got the book as a textbook when I went to acupuncture school because I had to take surface anatomy because when you're doing acupuncture, you don't necessarily need to know deep anatomy, but you do need to know surface anatomy so that you can figure out exactly where to place the needle, where the meridians are, where the points are.
yeah.
And so we studied surface anatomy, and this book, it is not only a beautifully illustrated book, but it also has an interactive DVD in it so that you
Oh,
can,
that's fun.
yeah, I highly recommend it.
Okay.
You are
Thank you.
interested in anatomy, but yes, it's really good. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't be there today.
Thank
Like, let's
you.
send some, stuff out to the universe and let's keep the snow at bay.
Right? Okay. By the middle of March, there better not be any damn ice.
I hope so.
I will be very mad. All right, we've come to the end of the podcast. And of course, now we need the necessary disclaimers. If you get 10 herbalists in a room, you're going to get 10 different opinions on something. We are a cantankerous lot, so your mileage may vary. The opinions that are expressed here on the podcast are the opinions of the herbalists appearing, including your host, Lily Cunning, and our sponsor, Haven Herbs. Also, some necessary legalese. Lily and Haven and anyone else appearing on this podcast are not your licensed medical provider and therefore can't legally offer advice or products to diagnose, treat, or cure any illness. The content on the podcast is not intended to substitute for advice given by a physician, a pharmacist, or any other licensed healthcare professional. You shouldn't use this information as self-diagnosis or treating a health problem or disease. Information and statements on the podcast regarding dietary supplements have not been evaluated by Health Canada nor the FDA of the United States and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease or health condition. And of course, see a practitioner of your choosing if your condition persists or worsens. Got it? Great.